Tonight on the Black Channel. Painting black people as anti-Asian didn't work, so let's try to paint them as anti-Jewish. That didn't work. Oh well, if at first you don't succeed. The Black Channel is live. Unapologetic, unadulterated, and absolutely uncompromising. Greetings, brothers and sisters from around the world, and welcome back to the home, the haven, the stronghold, the everlasting superfortress of intelligent black thought. We are the Black Media, and this is the Black Channel. And I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the voice of Black America, the Black Authority, broadcasting to you live from the only historically black college and university of higher education and learning in the cosmos. No football team required. You are, of course, welcome to join us. And join us you shall, because on tonight's program here, you all will remember at the very beginning of Joe Biden's presidency, I warned you what was coming. I told you what was coming, and that the idea, the strategy was going to be to erect non-black people with anti-black gripes, complaints, sentiments, charges, that's who the white supremacist power structure would use. Can't use white people, so let's go grab some non-white people or ethnically white people who can claim to be ethnically non-white if necessary, but all of them have the same thing in common. We're the foot soldiers to do the work of the white supremacists here. And so you're seeing that go up and up. So there's a video that's been going around that's been coming out of New York City here, and on their so-called Committee on Civil and Human Rights, the topic of discussion was denying human rights. And the city's running around all the time talking about housing is a human right, and so on and so forth. There's a video going around this showing that they don't believe that. And where the real problem of it comes from is that there was a fellow who was talking during it. There was a fellow who was talking. There were a group of folk, actually, but there was one fellow in particular there. And what he said really struck a chord with people. It really struck a chord with them. And you know it struck a chord with them because the white supremacists came out screaming. Absolutely screaming about it. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and show that to you here so you can listen and hear exactly what he had to say. I want to play him first, and then I want to play the other folks there. You know what? As a matter of fact, no. Let's not do that. Let's go ahead and play the other folks first, and then we'll go back and play him.
There are many others. I want to just cite an instance that is very real. We have Chinese landlord that have predominantly a Chinese building in the Lower East Side. He or she should know if someone that they're putting in the building has a history of being convicted for anti-Asian hate crimes. Why is that not considered? I mean, there's assaults, there's so many violent history of people that can come in. Yes, there are some that are rehabilitated and have not committed, and those should be given a chance. But there are also ones that have repeat offenses that actually bring a lot of harm to their neighbors and their community. This bill does not address that. This bill addresses sex offenders. That's great. But you know what? What about everything else that people living in that building should be concerned about and will be concerned about? As Councilmember Holden rightfully said, we do a lot of checks to protect our children in schools. They spend 8 hours in school and we protect them. They spend the other hours at home. Where are we in protecting the kids that return home? Shouldn't they be safe? Shouldn't they be free from criminals? I think these are common sense things that need to be written into the law. And we need you as representatives to really take the time and go through these concerns and address them in this law, and not just be bleeding hearts for people that, yes, some of them do deserve second chances, but there are ones that really are violent, are evil, and are repeating offenses that will cause harm to law-abiding citizens.
Did you hear some of the language in there? I want you to hear some of the language she was using. Violent, criminal, evil, bleeding heart. Now that one in particular, that's kind of might be a little bit of an old one for you all, but bleeding heart. Well, for those of you who are too young to know, that was part of the phrase of bleeding heart liberals. So some of you are not even old enough to remember when that term was coined. She left off the last word because the term is bleeding heart liberals, but she left off that last word. So for those of you too young to know where that term comes from, when she said bleeding hearts, that's bleeding heart liberals, but she very deliberately left it off. Now, you could tell that she's an immigrant. English is not her first language. Nothing, there's no shade at her about that, but there's a reason why that is relevant in regard to this. Now, the first thing I want you to understand here is, did you hear what she said? That you have landlords who have predominantly, landlords on the Lower East Side that have predominantly Chinese, in a predominantly Chinese building.
There are many others. I want to just cite an instance that is very real. We have Chinese landlord that have predominantly a Chinese building in the Lower.
Okay, now she is saying a Chinese landlord in a predominantly Chinese building. Now, those are her words. Let me back it up again.
I want to just cite an instance that is very real. We have Chinese landlord that have predominantly a Chinese building in the Lower East Side.
Okay. So those are her words. Her words now. That's what she said. So we go to the person here that folks have been writing about. This gentleman had a few choice words. He was speaking for people. By the way, we're going to come back here because you see there are two Asian women here. I don't know if they're Chinese necessarily, but two Asian women here and two white women. So we found our racial coalition. Well, hey, that racial coalition you've been looking for all this time. I found it. I found that racial coalition that folk keep talking about. I found it. It just didn't look the way we thought it was going to, but I found it. Oh, well. All right. Here's a piece of audio here, and this brother is going to say what he's got to say, and this upset all these folks. Listen to what he had to say. 40 seconds, that was all, and he upset everybody.
This is not about felonies. It's about race. It's about black people. You see them Asian people that I just was talking? I live in Rico Park now. That is the racistest neighborhood I've ever been in. And it's nothing but Asians in there. If you go in the store, they will follow you around like you getting ready to steal something. So that garbage that they was talking up here, because that's all it was garbage. You know what I'm saying? Because they don't want black people to live in black people's neighborhood. Because it's not their neighborhood. Because they from China, Hong Kong. We from New York. This bill has got to be. This is.
Now they're upset that he said that. They're upset that he said this.
Because it's not their neighborhood. Because they from China, Hong Kong. We from New York. This bill has got to be. This is not.
They're upset that he pointed out that they are from Asia and Hong Kong. They're from China and Hong Kong. She literally said those words. This is like the Kyrie Irving thing. Folks will sit up here and say exactly what you're saying and say, oh, you're anti-Jewish for repeating their words. Well, that was what she just said. So this is, I'm white and I say so via non-white people, via Asian society. Exactly what they tried to do when they were trying to say Kyrie Irving was anti-Jewish. So here we go again. She was the one who said you have Chinese landlords with predominantly Chinese buildings. By the way, shouldn't we be investigating how the hell it is in New York City that somehow you 6% of the population, of America's population anyway, and yet you can have a predominantly Asian building, predominantly Chinese, by the way, for one specific ethnic group? How in the hell is that possible? That's not possible. Unless the landlord is discriminating. It's not mathematically possible. When you go over there on Ocean, over there in Brooklyn, and I'm just naming that one because it's the most famous, but it's just one among many. And then you have whole Hasidic neighborhoods. That's not mathematically possible in Brooklyn or Manhattan. That's not mathematically possible that you can have a all Chinese building or majority Chinese building. It's not mathematically possible that you can have a majority Jewish building, a majority of the tenants be Jewish. That's not mathematically possible unless you are discriminating and filtering out people who are not members of your group. And that is what leads to things like the book, like the documentary that Kyrie Irving was looking at. That's what leads to that, because that's not addressed. A complete and total refutation of mathematics happening in broad daylight. Everybody knows about it. New York newspapers, the Times and the Post have written about this, and yet nothing has been done. You go up to Yonkers and whatnot, and you've got these Jewish neighborhoods, the school systems up there, all Hasidic Jews running it. And yet nobody is saying, hey, that's not mathematically possible. How is that mathematically possible? It isn't, unless you're discriminating. So they're sitting up here trying to make some straw man argument to take your eye off of that ball. But what he said is completely factually accurate. He's talking from his experience to let people know, hey, by the way, racism is not simply confined to white society. When you go to California and talk about the white Latinos, and in many cases the black ones who don't know any better, by the way, it's always anti-black racism that is institutionalized. Now, let me explain to you all how something is institutionalized. Get out your pens and your notepads. It is institutionalized when it becomes codified in an economy. You don't have an institution if there is no economic reinforcement. You just got a group of folk doing something in unison. And don't get me wrong, that has power too. But something cannot become institutionalized until you put an economic foundation in place, until it has economic reinforcement. Now you've got something institutionalized, whether it is a prison, a hospital, a school, or a high-rise apartment building on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. It is institutionalized when you got the finances backing up the policy, or should I say the wishes of the individuals doing it. Once you got the financial backing, now it is institutionalized. Now there are some folks here trying to run interference. So of course, everyone's favorite hate mag in New York City, the New York Post. Why, once again, let's change the subject. Here comes the New York Post. Let's change the subject. We don't need to talk about that. Let's change the subject. So they want to change the subject to convicted sex offender spews anti-Asian slurs. This is a long-ass headline during New York City Council meeting, and polls do nothing to stop him. That's a long-ass headline, isn't it? That's a long headline, New York Post. You getting paid by the syllable now? And by the way, you're correct. What slurs? There were no slurs being used. We're white. We say so. That's all it is. Now, I want to read to you the beginning of it here. I'm not going to read the whole thing. but it said a convicted sex offender who was allowed to openly spew anti-Asian bigotry at a public city council hearing this week without even the polls running the session stopping him or objecting. Douglas Powell, an ex-con affiliated with the lefty or advocacy group Vocal New York, spouted his racist hate Thursday while saying he supports a proposed city law that would bar landlords from conducting criminal background checks on prospective tenants. Powell spoke after 2 Asian women and 2 white women. Now, these are their words, not mine. Powell spoke after 2 Asian women and 2 white women. Let me go ahead and put the graphic up there. After 2 Asian women and 2 white women testified against the legislation, citing public safety concerns for other tenants and small landlords. Quote, "This is not about felonies, it's about race, it's about black people." Well, you know, to anyone who wants to make the argument that this is not about felonies, this is about race, I just couldn't help but notice that the folks who showed up against it were not black. I couldn't help but notice that. I just couldn't help but notice when I take a look at the folks who showed up against it. I'm just doing mathematics right now. I'm not even taking into account anything else. I'm just taking into account mathematics. Just looking at the math of it. So, really? Now, what I want to do here is I want to take you deep into this. Because you see, this is the reason why my bread and butter has always been Black economic empowerment. The Black Channel was founded upon this principle of focusing on the economics, following the money, and that was the path to salvation. The economics of it. So tonight I want to take you deeper into that. For those of you who have seen my groundbreaking, first of its kind documentary, Gentrified, Ethnic Cleansing American Style. You remember when that, for those of you who saw that documentary, you'll remember one of the things we touched on, because this goes straight to what Mr. Powell was talking about. And for those of you who have seen the documentary, you'll remember something in particular that goes right off of what he said. For those of you who are unaware, in the documentary, we showed you about the EB-5 visa program. Well, what in the world is the EB-5 visa? Well, from the AmericanImmigrationCouncil.org website, the EB-5 visa program, what it is and how it works. Listen very carefully for all the Haitians and Caribbeans out there locking arms with the dominant society. It says the Immigrant Investor Program, that's in capital letters, the Immigrant Investor Program, also known as EB-5, has become an increasingly important source of investment for developing projects in the United States, attracting billions of dollars to the U.S. economy and creating tens of thousands of jobs in the United States. However, the program is unlike any other managed by U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, not ICE, okay, in that it is the only visa program whose stated purpose is to create jobs and growth. This mandate creates special challenges and opportunities. How does the EB-5 program work? The EB-5 program is currently the only visa program designed to allow foreign investors, you mean like a Chinese landlord? To allow foreign investors to gain permanent residence, a green card, in the United States. It requires a minimum investment of $1 million or $500,000. If the investment is in a rural or targeted high unemployment area where unemployment is 150% of the national average, the investment must also result in the creation of at least 10 jobs. There are 10,000 EB-5 visas available each fiscal year. To qualify for the EB-5 program, immigrants can invest directly in a job-creating business. Now, you notice it didn't say they have to own one. You notice it didn't say you have to own it. It just said you have to invest in it. So there are casinos in Vegas, a couple of the Chinese casinos in Vegas on the Strip. Those were paid for with EB-5 money from Chinese nationals. Acadia out there in California, whole rich neighborhood full of Chinese nationals. First generation bought their way in. They bought their way in. So they don't even have to start a business. For those of you in the chat room, think about the usual things, restaurants, nail salons. No, this is if you invest. There are high rises in New York City. I covered this in my documentary, Gentrified. If you haven't seen Gentrified, you need to go see it. I already talked about that. There are high rise buildings in New York City that white men, in order to get venture capital, they go looking for EB-5 investors. They go pool them together. So high rises in New York, high rises in Vegas, casinos in Vegas, resorts in Florida. Resorts in Florida. No, this is not restaurants. These are white men telling them, hey, we'll help you get your U.S. citizenship if you got $500,000. If you got $500,000 or $1 million, we can help you get U.S. citizenship. And you'll get a profit. Let us take your money and invest it in one of our building projects. Hudson Yards or something. Hudson Yards, Lincoln Yards, Nashville Yards. So these are white developers, white real estate developers gathering together. In many cases, one of their favorites of the last 10 years has been Chinese nationals. Chinese nationals in particular have been one of their favorites. That's been one of their favorites to go ahead and to recruit from. They've been doing that for a long time. They've been doing that for a long time now. So that's the reason why I'm bringing this up when he points out specifically Chinese folks who live in New York City, particularly black people who have witnessed as this is unfolded. They understand, hey, these folks are not just coming from anywhere. You see, when you're in the southern United States, you meet somebody who might be from Japan, might be from Korea, might be from China. Usually they're going to be from Southern Asia. It's usually going to be Vietnamese or Filipino or whatever. But when you start noticing a whole neighborhood is like, they're all Chinese and they're not down on Canal Street. They're all Chinese, but they're not on Canal Street. Well, how is that possible? Take a look on your screen. This is why. This is why. So I want to make the point that you understand what it says. If you are an investor in a business, not that you own the business. It doesn't have to be Chinese people who are in charge of the business. If you get approached by a real estate developer in New York and he says, hey, we're trying to get together $300 million. If you'll put in $2 or $3 million, you will own a piece of the project and we will file the paperwork with the federal government to get you your green card, and you get to leapfrog all the other applicants for U.S. citizenship and getting their green cards. You get to leapfrog them. So for $500,000 or $1 million, you can leapfrog the other applicants and you'll make a profit when you get done. Let's be very clear. The EB-5 program was really created for the purposes of Asians and Middle Easterners. That's really specifically what it was made for. That's really specifically what it was made for. So just understand what that is. Understand why you're seeing that. They're doing that because they want you to be confused about it. They're doing that because they want you to be confused about it. So I'm just going ahead and catching you up on it. In the chat room, yes, Africans can do it if you got the money to put into it. You can do it if you got the money to put into it. But understand, statistically speaking, that ain't gonna be you. That's the problem. So yeah, you can if you got a mill to drop just for nothing. If you got a mill that you can just throw out there like that, well, sure, yeah, that can work. Now, I want to go on and finish this right here. It says, to qualify for the EB-5 program, immigrants can invest directly in a job-creating business or can invest through regional centers approved by USCIS to promote economic growth in designated areas like the Vegas Strip. If the investor's initial application is approved, and they have attorneys, by the way, let me stop right quick. They have attorneys who, just like immigration attorneys, these are attorneys who will sit here and shepherd through the process of doing that. They'll shepherd your paperwork through the process with the federal government. So once you get with these developers have attorneys who specialize in shepherding your EB-5 paperwork through the federal government. So I just wanted you to understand how this process works. It's not just developers, it's developers, attorneys, accountants. They've got basically a whole corporate structure. And yes, that includes Mr. Silverstein, who owned the World Trade Towers before they got knocked down and now owns the Freedom Tower, or the World Trade Tower. That includes him. He's had projects that use money from EB-5 too. So one of the sales pitches they use for that is, by the way, don't worry, we have attorneys on staff, immigration attorneys on staff and on call who will help get your paperwork through. So you'll be over here as soon as possible. It goes on to say, if the investor's initial application is approved, the investor can apply for conditional residence in the United States. Once approved, the conditional residence lasts 2 years. After 2 years, the investor can apply to have the conditions removed and have the conditional residency made permanent, but only if the investment has resulted in the creation of a minimum of 10 jobs as required. So when you hear this man telling you that, by the way, he's seen folk from all over the place, Chinese and Hong Kong. There's a reason he said that in the chat room. It sounds like the Dawes Roll. Sounds like the Dawes Roll updated for the 21st century. $5 ain't gonna make it no more. $500,000. We can swing that. Yes, any 10 jobs, folks. It's just that lenient. Any 10 jobs. So if you're investing in a high-rise hotel, a high-rise office building, if you're just one of the people who invest in it, like in a real estate investment trust, that's all you got to do. You put $1 million into it. The white folk take care of investing the money. And when the thing opens, as long as it's got more than 10 employees who work on this development project, that's it. It covers all of you. So let's just say that you're building a $300 million high rise. If you and 20 of your friends put in $1 million, if you and 20 of your friends put in, $500,000, yeah, that's all you got to do. That's all you got to do. All of you are covered. Even though the project costs $300 million, you and your friends put in $1 million a piece. It's just 20 of you, $20 million. All 20 of you are now covered. When that project opens, as long as it hires 10 people or more, all of you got your paper up. All of you got your green cards. That's it. Done. Done. So do his words have a little more prescience when you hear them now?
This is not about felonies. It's about race. It's about black people. You see them Asian people that I just was talking? I live in Rico Park now. That is the racistest neighborhood I've ever been in. And there's nothing but Asians in there. If you go in the store, they will follow you around like you getting ready to steal something. So that garbage that they was talking up here, because that's all it was garbage. You know what I'm saying? Because they don't want black people to live in black people's neighborhood. Because it's not their neighborhood. Because they from China, Hong Kong. We from New York. This bill has got to be.
Now, this is another thing that we're talking about here. These are neighborhoods that black people have been in. And as we've said, between Columbia University and Joe Biden and everything else, they're flooding the zone with non-black people for the specific purposes of displacing the current black residents. This is no secret here. Everybody knows that's what it's been. They send them to black neighborhoods. These folks ain't going to Tribeca. They're not moving in at Tribeca. I covered this in my documentary Gentrified. If you have not seen it, I covered this in Gentrified. These folks aren't moving down to Tribeca. They're not going to places like the Hamptons. They're not going to Williamsburg. They're not doing that. They're not going to Chelsea. They're not moving in there. That's not where they're going. That's why he was saying specifically where it is. He's like, these are not Asian neighborhoods. These are historically black neighborhoods. And that's where they're going. So he's saying this woman has already set up here and admitted to it that, a Chinese landlord, when he comes in, it's going to be nothing but Chinese folk living in the building. So much for your housing discrimination laws.
There are many others. I want to just cite an instance that is very real. We have Chinese landlord that have predominantly a Chinese building in the Lower East Side.
On the Lower East Side, how the hell is that possible? How is that possible? That's not mathematically possible unless your practicing discrimination is engineered. And understand that. That's what they've done up to this point with the law the way it is. With the so-called housing protections that we allegedly have now. This is the reason why you got to cut the check. This is the reason why we must have reparations, and it's got to be financial dollars. It can't be anything else. Don't bring me a book. Don't bring me a degree. Don't bring me a diploma. Don't bring me a land deed. Bring them dollars. Because that's what you asked of them. To anybody who's living under any delusions, they didn't tell the Asian immigrants coming over here to bring Bitcoin. The federal government is not accepting Bitcoin as a form of payment, and neither are the real estate developers who are helping to shepherd through these EB-5 visas. They said bring cash money on the table. That's it. They didn't ask for Bitcoin. They didn't ask for a real estate deed. They didn't ask for an IOU. They didn't ask for your Barbie doll and your G.I. Joe and your Star Wars collection. They said bring dollars. And matter of fact, you need to bring a lot of them. At least $500,000 to $1 million. You got to bring plenty of them. No, you can't go to a white neighborhood and develop anything because the white folks got it zoned. They got their zone, so you can't touch nothing. They got organized, so you can't touch nothing. Take a look at what you see on your screen right here. They were smart. They didn't send the white male developers. They sent some females, a bunch of women who don't own anything. They're speaking on behalf of their warrior class. They have the optics. The optics that they're giving you are a bunch of females. Oh, take a look at us. We are just, quiet and demure, and, we're just trying to uphold the integrity of the neighborhood and the safety concerns. They didn't send any men up there. Because if you send a man up there talking about dangerous, criminal, evil, bleeding hearts, you sound like Bill O'Reilly and Tucker Carlson from Fox News. So they did this deliberately. They did this deliberately to try to blunt the blow as much as they could. So they affected the optics of it. They tried to curate the optics of it as much as they could. This is propaganda. Now, I'm not here to speak on whether or not folks are getting into housing or whatnot. But what I am here to tell you is that the arguments they're trying to make here, there's a whole reason why you're having to see this the way it is. We're talking about this is for black folk. This is targeting black people. You got to understand, in New York City, you can't build nothing in New York. I want you all to understand, you can't build anything in New York. New York is the single most difficult place in America to build anything. It takes years to get your damn building permits through. I said years. Years. See, this is how you lock black folk out. So all the stuff that's built, that's what it is. It takes years to get a building permit approved. These developers come through. The stuff you see them building in New York right now, that's some, if it's small, like these 2 and 3 level condos that you see popping up all over Brooklyn. These 2 and 3 level condos you see popping up all over Brooklyn, man, they put in their permits 2 or 3 years ago to do that. It's taken them 2 or 3 years to get their permits through. You just now seeing them break ground. It's taken them years to get their permits through, to start building. And that's if you can afford it. But you ain't building anything in New York. Another thing is, the rest of you got to understand, if you don't live in New York City, you'll understand, New York City is not like, Houston or Dallas. You don't have houses in Manhattan. You don't have houses in Brooklyn. If you go to the Bronx, now you start seeing houses. You go over to Queens, now you start seeing houses. You go to Long Island, you're going to see some houses over there. But for the most part, Manhattan, there ain't no houses on Manhattan Island. In Brooklyn, you might find 1 or 2 houses. I'm talking about houses the way you all are used to. But you already know, if you find a house that's got a yard, that's going to be a few $1 million. That's going to be a few $1 million. You'll find a few, but you can count them on one damn hand and have enough fingers left over to drive. You can count them on one hand. There's always some contrary nigga. You can count them on one hand and have enough fingers to drive. Brooklyn is not a bedroom community. Brooklyn is not a bedroom suburb. There's the reason right there where black folks stay confused all the damn time. Somebody starts telling the truth and one Negro trying to get attention. Well, it's not all of it there. He doesn't have a mortgage on anything. Don't let reality sit up here and spoil his stupidity. Brooklyn is not a suburb. Brooklyn doesn't have, nobody's building a housing subdivision in Brooklyn. Nobody's doing that because you can't. So don't let the ADHD kids sit up here and fool you. You go to Brooklyn trying to buy a house if you want, looking for a house if you want to. You go to Brooklyn and try to buy a house if you want to. Try that. I said a house, not a brownstone, not a condo, not an apartment, a house. I literally just said with a front yard. You don't have that in Manhattan. You don't really have that in Brooklyn. If you do, you can count them on one damn hand. So what I'm saying is, for the rest of you who live in places like Philadelphia, Richmond, Pittsburgh, Atlanta, and you're used to the idea, well, we'll just clear some land and we'll build us a house. That doesn't happen in New York. You can't do that. They don't have quote unquote subdivisions like that in New York. They don't have that. You can't build out like that. So for those of you who live south of Pennsylvania, they don't have that in New York. You can't do that. So the available housing that is there, for the most part, is what you got to deal with. And anything new, it's going to be years from construction. Anybody who's been in New York City knows that every damn thing for rent is spoken for a year in advance. A year in advance. It's a waiting list on every damn thing. That's why, but when this stuff is getting built, this is why you see people show up in groups at the city council and everything talking about there need to be, a certain number of set aside apartments or set aside rent. There needs to be a certain segment of that needs to be set aside. Why do you think folks show up like that? Because this is a real damn issue. I've been to New York several times, and I got to tell you, every damn time I go to New York City and I'm watching New York 1, 2, 4, any other channel, Every time I'm watching it there for the evening news, it seems like every time I go, there is some meeting at the city council for housing and to reserve housing units for rent controlled. It seems like every time I turn on the news when I go to New York City, it doesn't matter if I'm at a friend's place, a bar, well, I don't go to bars, but a restaurant, a cafe. If they got a TV on and it's 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon and the news is playing, they're sitting up here talking about there's a meeting at the city council over some skyscraper, condo, or whatever being built for setting aside apartments, setting aside a certain number of units reserved for low income and working class housing. So this is a super major issue. You're in a situation here where literally it doesn't matter how much money you have. Do you understand? Listen to what this woman just said, the circumstance she's describing. This doesn't matter how much money you make.
There are many others. I want to just cite an instance that is very real. We have Chinese landlord that have predominantly a Chinese building.
Now, when the game is rigged like that and they're not allowing anything new to be built and you just got to get in when you fit in, she's letting you know, oh, no. It doesn't matter how much money you make. That doesn't matter here. Chinese national has come over here. He's gotten his green card. He's the Chinese investor. Landlord owns the building. And now it's going to be nothing but Chinese folk coming up in here. Same thing you saw in Texas and California. When the white Latinos sprinkle down, then when they become a manager, that's the last time a non-white Latino gets hired at that restaurant. And now you're seeing the fruition of it after decades of this strategy being used. Decades of strategies being used.
An instance that is very real. We have Chinese landlord that have predominantly a Chinese building in the Lower East Side. He or she should know.
Now, did you hear what she said? She tried to clean that up.
That have predominantly a Chinese building. We have Chinese landlord that have predominantly a Chinese building in the Lower East Side. He or she should know.
She said what she meant the first time. He should know. They know who they are there to represent. Chinese landlord owns a predominantly Chinese building. A building with predominantly Chinese people in it, was what she didn't say. He should know. He or she should know. Yeah, we know who sent you. We know who sent you. Look, the bottom line is this brother right here was just getting down to the facts. He was just getting down to the facts. Don't leave your kids around him. But by the way, his circumstances, that if you try to make it seem like it's only the sex offenders who are interested in this, that's a damn lie. That's a damn lie. And it's not just sex offenders who are interested in this. That's what they trying to make it look like. No. And so the brush they're trying to put on this now is making it seem like, oh, well, this is anti-Asian. This man didn't use any slurs. They talking about he used anti-Asian slurs. Didn't use any. But they saying, by the way, we said it is. So the media is trying everything they can right there every time we start talking about these issues. And I just want to make it clear that that's what it is, because understand what the solution is. The solution is economic. Already, they're talking about cutting the check in California. Next up needs to be New York. And let me say something else right now. Let me tell you something. Black folk in New York, the ones who got their heads on straight, New York is a hustle town. I've been there many a moon. Let me tell you like it is. New York is the hustle capital of America. It is the black hustle capital of America. You ain't never seen black folk who got a hustle mentality like New York. It's second to none. I'm from Louisiana. New York is second to none. I got to give New York its props all the way around, and I always have said that. Everybody in New York is about having a side hustle. Everybody about New York is about getting it. Everybody in New York is about understanding development. If I meet one more black person in New York who's a damn realtor, a realtor with no real estate, but okay, if I meet one more damn black person, but black folk in New York get it. Everybody in New York is trying to get something popped off. Every black person in New York is trying to get something popped off. Everywhere. Everywhere. New York is the home of the pop-up shops. What they say, they won't let me sell it shop in the store? Damn it, right here on the street corner. New York is the home of the black street vendors. Some of them been there for decades. Decades. Been posted up. But you're in an environment where they're engineering the rules that give preferential treatment to Asians, Jews, Latinos, Indians, Arabs, everybody except black people, and particularly foundationals, everybody except them. The game is rigged. All the available real estate has been taken like that. So you're allowing the Chinese, here's the real crazy part about it, you're allowing the Chinese to come over here with that stuff. There's not that many Chinese millionaires like that in China, but if their government sends them over here, how many of you are familiar with the stories about they got Chinese police in countries around the world now, including the United States? The government of China has Chinese police. There's a big story about it in Australia. Big story about that in Australia. The Chinese government, when the Chinese nationals relocate, they got police in like these flop houses and stuff in various countries to keep an eye on those people. So I suggest to you that many of these so-called EB5 investors are actually fronts being financed by the Chinese government. They being given the money to come over here and then set up citizenship, and it's their job to settle the terrain for the country of China. Meanwhile, they're grabbing up black folks in the middle of the ocean down there in Florida and sending your ass on a first express flight back to Haiti. Sending you on an express flight right back to Haiti. Don't ask how. You don't know where these folks' money is coming from. You can't verify their income or where they're getting it from. All you know is they showed up with a check. That's all you know. All you know is they showed up with the funds. That's all you know. You don't know anything beyond that. And guess what? These white real estate developers ain't asking. These white real estate developers ain't asking where these folks are getting the damn money from. They're not worried about that. Long as you got the funds, that's it. That's it. So you are up. Do you understand? Black people in New York, and I'm going to focus on New York right now because I understand there's black people across America. Black folk in New York City, however, are fighting the two biggest economies in the world. Black people in New York City are being targeted for extermination by the two largest economies on the planet, America and China. And for you to sit up here and say something about it, here they come with the bull jive. No, take a look at what's on your screen. For all the folks who've been talking about Jewish folk all this time, this is why we tell you, you can't stay stuck on stupid. You can't stay stuck on stupid. The owner of the NBA team in Brooklyn, I believe, Kyrie Irving plays for him, Mr. Tsai, the Asian. I was trying to point this out then. You gonna be an idiot who's gonna take his eye off the ball because you're one-track minded. You cannot focus on one aspect of white supremacy. You've got to slay the whole beast. You have got to slay the entire beast. Some of the slow kids, well, let me go ahead and cut off his toe. No, you got to slay the whole monster. And if you're sitting up here with this lazy delusion, well, if I just take care of one aspect of it, we'll be good from there. No, you won't. No, you won't. They want you to take your eye off the ball and off the reality of exactly where you're sitting at. Because they want us to, everything's about diverting from what the subject actually is. Everybody else up there has got themselves solidified. They have whole enclaves. The only place that is progressively getting smaller is where black folk are. Those are the only places getting progressively smaller. And that's by design. And now they're literally pulling up on you and showing, by the way, we're having whole city council meetings. Hey, just get rid of all the rules so we can just do what we gonna do. Let's just do what we gonna do. In the chat room, you can't be, you're correct, Arius. You can't be a Chinese multimillionaire and billionaire in America without being a member of the Chinese Communist Party. You can't do that. They're not gonna let that happen. So if you got a first generation Chinese person in America who's just papered up, oh, he's mobbed up with the party over there. And that's the reason they sent him. That's the reason they sent him. He's here to get mobbed up with the party. Simple as that. So black folk have got to stay focused on our square and understand that they're going to try to change the rules as they go along. They're going to try to change the rules as they go along. So you're noticing they're pivoting back. You stopped them the last time before when they tried to talk about black folk and anti-Asian. They tried to do black folk and anti-Jewish. We beat those back. Guess what? They're back again. And we're going to beat it back this time too. The subject is cut the check. So for those of you who've seen this video, who saw this video, these folks there in New York City, just remember, I've already given you the game about EB5. I've already told you what you need to know so that you understand what the argument is and you don't back down on that. Do not back down on that. Although, believe it or not, there are some people who have different ideas about how to deal with this. For example, how is it that the white folk up on this thing here, that they're so comfortable, knowing full well that they're bringing over, they have an open door immigration policy that is crowding them out too? Why is it that they're so comfortable? Well, I got a couple ideas. You're going to want to stick around here, by the way. I got a couple of ideas about why they are so comfortable about that. Let me tell you, I got a couple of ideas. Before we do, we are going to take a very brief commercial, non-commercial break. I want to thank everyone, that is everybody who has contributed to support tonight's program by PayPal, Cash App, or Super Chat. Big shout out here to my man, Tommy Felix. You are correct. We have no friends. We must be vigilant. Absolutely. Big shout out to you, brother, in the Super Chat. NJ Williams, thank you very much. Tank Moham coming through with the double century. Thank you very much for that. We appreciate that, brother. Also, Position Adjust. Thank you very much for your support. We appreciate that. NJ Williams and everybody else who's contributed to tonight's program. We're going to take a very brief commercial, non-commercial break. This is the Black Channel.
Our Life Recruiting and Consulting specializes in direct placement. If your company is looking to hire top talent, or you are looking to start a new career, our network of professional recruiters can help. We provide recruiting, LinkedIn lead generation, access to our professional network, paid job postings, interviewing, and more. Check out our specialized services: information technology recruiting, STEM career consulting, sales recruiting, hiring process consulting for your business, resume writing, LinkedIn profile consultation. Follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn and get hired with us.
Girl, I am so tired of Twitter and TikTok. We need something just for us.
Yeah, and I was post on 6 Zeros, but they don't have a mobile app.
That's a lie. 6 Zeros actually does have a mobile app. It's available on iOS and Android. That's your phone?
Yeah.
That is humongous.
Anyway.
6 Zeros is where the Black community taps into unfiltered and authentic conversations on the topics we know and love. I gotta get out of here. But remember, don't just sign up.
We know. Host.
Hi, this is Brenda Starr, creator of Poetry with a Purpose and author of the book Pressed But Not Crushed. Pressed But Not Crushed is an anthology of political poems that address current and historical issues in American descendants of slave population and African American population. The book describes slavery and its residuals, Jim Crow segregation, social depredation, and other relevant issues to American descendants of slaves and African Americans, including the current political climate that does not address our issues.
This is the Black Channel. I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authority. Very glad to be with you all here this evening. Thank you very much for tuning in to tonight's program. Thank you to everyone who's contributed to the program. Also, Burn Rubber, thank you very much for the C-Spot. We appreciate that as well. And thank you for supporting the Black media. And there are some folks who have got their own ideas about what to do about this, by the way. If you ever wonder why some of them are not so worried about it, some of them got their own ideas about how they can fix this little situation. They got their own thoughts about it. This is a video here that's put up by Rizza Islam. We got some folks here who've decided, first, you had the ice bucket challenge and the milk crate challenge. Well, we got a whole new thing right here, boy. Whole new thing.
We're talking about. This is the situation that we're in right now. How is this? What you're proposing is have more babies. That's it, right?
Exactly. And I often say it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek tweet and that I didn't expect anyone to actually conceive a child based on a tweet. But at the same time, I was trying to draw attention in a slightly humorous way to a very real problem, and that is that whites currently do not have a replacement rate when it comes to our births. And by some estimations, we are scheduled for complete extinction in 300 years. And if you're thinking about that in terms of like historically, that's not very long. So we really need to get on this and decide whether or not we want to have white people in the future.
Okay. So, yes, sir. We have now entered the era of the White Baby Challenge. Welcome to the era of the White Baby Challenge. And by the way, for those of you who are watching last night's program, I'm sure old Bowling Ball Martin will be very happy. Old Bowling Ball Martin will be very happy to hear about that, I'm sure. I'm certain. So just in case you were wondering if there's anybody out there who's decided, hey, what do we do about this? What do we do about this? Why are they not worried? Why are they not concerned about that? Well, they got their own ideas. I mean, it's not exactly vax that ass up. It's not exactly that. I do understand this is a little bit different from vax that ass up. I understand. However, it does let you know they're starting to do that. You're starting to see the turn happen here. You're starting to see the turn happen. Can't be the least bit surprised about that. So if it seems like there's some folks out there who have not been concerned about how it's been happening, what are they doing? Oh, this is going down. Remember, Elon Musk owns the most relevant social network right now. He owns the most relevant one. Put a little slight tweak in the algorithm. It's not like Twitter hasn't been doing that since day one. Put a little slight tweak in the algorithm. Next thing you know, you could see this or something like it everywhere. Now, by the way, I said, you know what? This is great strategy. I got to give credit where credit is due. I think it's a little corny. It's definitely a little corny. But this is one of those things. Remember something, folks. We've been telling you all for years. White supremacy always packages strategies as a joke. the more, the more strident, radical things, they always package that as a joke. Did you hear what she said at the beginning there? Remember what he's always told
talking about? This is the situation that we're in right now. How is this? What you're proposing is have more babies. That's it, right?
Exactly. And I often say it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek tweet, and that I didn't expect anyone to actually conceive a child based.
Now, y'all know that's bull jive. She did not post that because she didn't think anybody was going to take it seriously. She did not post it because she thought no one was going to take it seriously. Oh, well, really? It was just, kind of tongue-in-cheek. Yeah, like Pepe the Frog and thumbs up. And the okay sign. Yeah, like that. Like that. White supremacy packages those things like that. Now, by the way, I ain't hating. She's saying, hey, look, our birth rate's been falling off. In reality, the birth rate is not really actually falling off. It's reaching equilibrium is what it's doing. Children are the investments of the poor. Since white folks have engineered themselves into being an overclass, they no longer have to invest in children the way that they previously did. So now they're investing in real estate, housing, taking over the cosmos. That's what they've been investing in. They don't have to invest in children like that. But what they're finding out is, yeah, but if we don't have any children, who's going to be the next generation of the workforce? Because over time, that's what you've depended on as a workforce. So we become so affluent that we've outsourced reproduction. Yeah, but outsourcing reproduction comes with its own threats. So now the stay-at-home moms and the stay-at-home wives are like, okay, now it's our job to knock out some more babies. Now it's time to knock out some more babies. I don't see this getting any traction, with third, fourth, and fifth wave feminism and with the family courts being as messed up as they are and whatnot. It's going to take a lot to turn that around. But it does show you that white society is having a conversation in and of itself. And what I'm telling you is that when push comes to shove, they gonna get on code quicker than you think. They're gonna get on code and get organized quicker than you think. It's gonna happen faster than you think it will. If they really decide to get down with this and say, hey, we need to focus on our birth rate, that's going to pop off a lot faster than you think it will. All of a sudden, that so-called the so-called patriarchy is going to be thumbs up and favorites across the board. All of a sudden, it's going to be thumbs up and favorites across the board when they get done. It's going to turn around so fast, your head's going to spin off your neck. Your head's going to spin off your neck. You can't protect a white economy if you don't have white people. So, yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. And of course, the political class will be right behind it. Pete King, Steve King, all those kings. Anybody who's not Martin Luther King. They're going to be on code with that. The white political class is going to be on code with that. I wonder what the black political class will be focusing on. I wonder what they'll be thinking about in doing. Oh. Well, Mr. Booker, husband, father, son, founder of Hood to the Holler, former state rep, first black Kentuckian, former state rep, so okay, former, first black Kentuckian nominated for U.S. Senate. The movement continues, he/him. While white society is not arguing, while white society is not having a debate about gender, when they're not having a debate, they trying to figure out who's going to carry these babies. Meanwhile, your black political class has been flooded by confused little individuals. Confused little individuals here. The only pronouns that apply to Mr. Booker are dumb/dumber. Those are the only pronouns that apply to him. Jason, I don't think those are pronouns. Yes, they are. Trust me. Trust me, they are. That's what your black political class is focusing on. In Kentucky, no less. Mitch McConnell's home turf. That's what they're focusing on. Yeah, forget power, wealth, or influence. He's worried about other things. He's got bigger, better things to be concerned about. Doesn't have time to deal with any of this other stuff. He got bigger, better things to worry about. With 437,000 followers, I'd like to see the bot count on that one. I'd like to see how many bots there are on that one. Black folk have real issues that we're dealing with out here. Black folk have real stuff that we're dealing with and real things that we're facing. We have real problems that are sitting in our laps right now. And they are utilizing non-white groups for the purposes of doing it. So before it was Asian, then it was Jewish. Now we're back to Asian again. Just understand that's not accidental. The corporate media complex and the government are both in on it. They're both in on it. They're both doing the same thing. And then you wake up here and you got black folks sitting up here debating about pronouns. Your political class is telling you the most important thing you could be doing is talking about a pronoun. Only pronouns I'm interested in are paid and paid mo. So don't expect Mr. Booker here to be concerned about that. He's got bigger things on his mind. He's worried about something else. So no wonder the Democrats send him. No wonder this is what they love. They love hearing this kind of thing. Him, Tiara Mack. This is what they encourage. They encourage you to believe that don't worry about housing. Show me the poll among black folk that said, the big issue right now, we give me my pronoun. That's the big issue we need to be worried about. When they say that, every time you turn around, they claim that there's some minor issue that isn't white supremacy. Let me be very, very clear about that part. By the way, they always claim it's some other minor issue that isn't white supremacy. Now, it's not that. Black folk aren't worried about white supremacy. No. Black folk are worried about the symptoms of white supremacy. They worry about housing. Well, why are we worried about housing? Because we don't have enough money for buying houses. Why we don't have enough money for buying houses? Systemic racism, white supremacy. Oh, hell. Sounds like we need to take care of that white supremacy issue. Well, before we do that right there, we need to make sure we take care of everything. Everything is going on now. We need to deal with all that. And that's what it becomes. You want to know why it is you've seen black votes going down? This is why. You see things like this? This is the reason why. Black folk are recognizing that you have a political class that isn't doing a damn thing. They're not doing a damn thing. This guy is not even going for the black vote. You go on his page, he's going for the non-black vote all the way up and down backwards. That tells you who sent him. That tells you who sent him. He knows what his mission is. He's gotten his marching orders. He's been told to come here and enact another agenda here. Meanwhile, black folks' real needs are not being met. The real needs are not actually being met by anybody. Your political class is unconcerned. That's why we got to be concerned. So no, I'm not going to let this fella up here run my local daycare. Not going to do that. No, he doesn't get to chaperone any of the kids at the homecoming party. He doesn't get to do that. He doesn't get to do that, but he's not lying. Jason, they say he a sex offender, Jason. Excuse me, they got drag queens in New York doing damn me story time. You got white drag queens doing story time at the library in front of kids in New York. And they register sex offenders. So being a sex offender is a problem now? Or is it only a problem if you can't pay off the right politicians? Shout out Jeffrey Epstein. Ghislaine Maxwell. And yo Rolodex. Yeah, shout out to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and their Rolodex. Can't exactly get, we can never get those numbers. That'd be great. Be glad to have those numbers one day. That'd be nice. In the meantime, though, I'm not going to down somebody from telling the truth. In the chat room, you write Ed Buck. I mean, if you papered up the right way, you might be able to get somebody to turn their heads. Yeah. Oh, Anthony Weiner, we can go down the list. All of a sudden, it's bad to be a sex offender? It is now? Because if it is, why haven't we canceled story time yet? Why haven't we canceled drag queen story time yet? If it's bad to be a sex offender, it's only bad to be a sex offender when you black and you show talking about the housing. It's bad now. Now it's bad. Really? Okay. We're going to go ahead and open up the telephone lines. Y'all know when we do it here, if you missed last night's program talking about Roland Martin, the most disgusting thing that bastard's ever said, boy, y'all know on my program, you better show up with a bulletproof vest. When we open up the phone lines here, anything is liable to happen to the host. So let me go ahead and let me duck down right quick. Let me duck down, get out this telephone number. The number is 646-787-1933. That's 646-787-1933. By the way, Bright Eyes, if you out there, you are invited to call in tonight. My mods y'all better not have blocked her. You all better not have blocked Bright Eyes. She's got an invitation to call in anytime she wants to. Anytime she wants to be on the line. Anytime Bright Eyes wants to call up, she's at the front of the line. Anytime. For the rest of you, however, the telephone number is 646-787-1933. That's 646-787-1933. Your personal access code to the Black media. We're going to go ahead and open up the phone lines and take a couple of calls here. Let me get caller from area code 281. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Prince out of Richmond, Texas.
Prince out of Richmond. What's on your mind?
Jason, I know they're trying to use the excuse of the brother's background, but down here where I'm in Richmond, but it actually happened in Katy, Texas. A FBA couple, they always using this safety excuse. FBA couple tried to buy a $2 million condo, three of them for $2 million on I-10 and Grand Parkway, right across from Memorial City Mall. And this Asian lady, this Asian realtor, Josie Lynn, her name, and Katie, you know what she told them? She told them that my gut feeling tells me not to sell to you because we won't get along with you. It's an Asian complex. They advertise it as that. You know what the advertisement is, Jason? A new option for safe and simple Asian life. In the midst of Katy, Texas, right off the freeway. They don't want to sell them condos. And they filed a discrimination suit, and they still want to buy it. They bought several Black people, even if you got the money, they don't want to sell to you, Jason.
Well, you
and
know,
her sister tried to buy it.
I'm all in favor of that too, by the way. I'm talking about lawsuits against them. I'm all in favor of that. I'm all in favor of breaking that. I'm all in favor of that. Because, you know, as black folk here, it's not our job to go running around the whole damn world to find a place to live. That's not our job. And no, that's illegal as hell. So I'm all in favor of breaking that. That's right. Take them to court, run them through there, break open the whole damn thing. And by the way, if they want to do Asian flight, they can do that too now. By the way, if they want to do Asian flight, you done built a brand new subdivision. Hey, let's go ahead. That Asian flight can pop off. If it's that serious to you, you know what? I'm all in favor of that. Because that's what they do with black folk when they want to disinherit us. You show up in court, that's it. Judge from the gavel, bam, out you go. Out you go. So you're telling me one lawsuit and you can free up a whole subdivision? That works for me. And then they can go build a new one. And then we can come down there. It doesn't take many of us. Just send one or two families. That's it. Wait till they good and they done built about 100, 200 houses. And they sitting up here, sitting on the front lawn and they're watering things and going through the tulips and sitting up here, you know, doing their feng shui and tai chi in the morning. That's great. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all.
Look, like I tell my neighbors.
If you see something on 22s, come down the street. What is that? There's something bumping. So, yeah, I'm just like, go ahead and build 200-300 houses. That's good. We're going to wait till you good and solid. It's like, oh, okay, there you go. We're just going to get 2 or 3 of them. It's like, oh, there goes the neighborhood. Well, let's go ahead and put our EB5 money together. We'll build a new subdivision. Great. Let you get down the block and you get good and ready to build another one. Just as soon as you get done with that one, oh boy. As soon as they sell the first 3 or 4 houses, next thing you know, I'll be damned. Oh, this big black thing on 22s came down the street. I'll be damned. There goes the next neighborhood. I'm in favor of it.
Hey, I told my neighbors I'll sit outside and take the property value down, leave them alone. Now, they got Asian investors, the ones you're talking about, these Chinese nationals. They bought tracts of homes out here in the neighborhoods. I don't know how it worked out for them because of the housing crisis and stuff, but they would buy 10 homes. They're not even American citizens and rent them out to people. And you don't supposed to be able to buy as an investment when they first open up the neighborhood, but they let them do it. 10 homes in a row right next to each other.
Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. It's chicanery. There's no way in the world that this conforms to housing law. It's mathematically impossible. You can't do it. But then again, it's like these white farmers with the illegal aliens working on their farms. That's mathematically impossible too. Y'all set up here and created an entire prison industrial complex. A black man can't sell a leaf of marijuana without getting a life sentence. And yet you got these white folk here with whole acres of land. Anybody who's seen it, Kentucky, Georgia, the Carolinas, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas. And I'm talking about they got whole buses out there. Whole buses. Yeah. I'm not talking about 1 or 2, whole buses. Now, when we were selling dope, you couldn't have a car. And you got a whole damn bus. You can't have a trunk full of illegal activity. They have a whole damn school bus full of illegal activity, and it's business as usual. What happened to asset forfeiture? What happened to that? I've always said that about these illegal aliens over here working. By the way, aren't you supposed to be enacting asset forfeiture and come take all their land, all their equipment, all their houses? Ain't you supposed to just grab all them John Deere tractors? Aren't you supposed to just come and grab them all? Isn't that what's supposed to happen? But it isn't. I'll let you have the last word.
Thank you, Jimmy. Well, Jason, I think what you're doing tonight, and I appreciate it, because what they're going to try to blow back, they do this bellwether test to check and see if we as black people are going to go for it. And because of you and the new black media, y'all standing up when y'all on top of this whenever it happens, you are our voice. You understand? and we appreciate you. And I thank you for everything.
Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Let me get caller from area code 646. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
This is Onan from Queens.
Onan from Queens. What's on your mind?
Yeah, so when you said that you have all of these Chinese people and Hispanics that are moving in to New York City, but they're not moving into the areas like Chelsea and Hudson Yards, right? But they're moving into the areas where the black people are. That is so true. And I noticed this firsthand, because I work for a company called MedRight. And, we test people for COVID, right? So they send us over to different parts of the city. And a lot of the areas that we go to tend to be the hood, And, we'll go into these areas and it's like they're just running the black people out of there. It's like you might have a few black people that live in the neighborhood, but it's like if you look at all the business owners, if you look at like the economic footprint in the area, it is almost entirely either Chinese or Jewish.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
just think
if
it's
all you're
disgusting.
looking at is the physical population, you won't get it. But when you start counting the economic population, then it comes into stark relief.
Right. It's like, if we're to make a footprint in this city, if we're to actually have an economic stronghold, then we really got to come together, and we got to operate the same way these Chinese and these Jewish people operate. You know what I mean? But I'm going to land my plane there. I don't want to take up too much time. B1, and thank you for all that you do.
B1, thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Let me get caller from area code 612. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Michelle with Bobby Ward's Club. How are you?
Okay. If you're on speakerphone, you're too far back. I can't make out what you're saying. Let me give you one more try to get that together.
Okay.
What's your name? Where you calling from?
Michelle from Minneapolis.
Okay, Michelle from Minneapolis.
Okay.
What's on your mind?
I'm glad that you're bringing a lot of attention to this subject because a lot of black people are too afraid to talk about the role that Asians are playing in white supremacy. We're seeing in a lot of the major cities in America. We're seeing it here in Minneapolis. We're doing a event on the impact of gentrification on Rondo coming up for Martin Luther King, and the Asians is what gentrified the Rondo community, which once was 75% black, and now it's 25% black. I went to a meeting in Minneapolis not too long ago for businesses, for the light rail that's coming in on north side of Minneapolis, which is predominantly black. They're trying to do the same thing. I was the only black-owned business owner in the meeting. There was nothing but Asians in the meeting. So I'm very happy, and we need to give more attention to this subject, the role that they're playing in white supremacy, as well as in what's going on right now with SCOTUS and affirmative action with the schools.
You know what? That's a very good point.
Thank you, my brother.
Make. Going into the future,
yes,
I want black folk to be very cognizant about these. You're seeing a push right now to build high-speed rail in America, which is long overdue. The rest of the world's had it for a while. Long overdue. Nothing wrong with that, but it's starting to look a lot like the second coming of the Interstate and Highway Act. And when they start building them, you start noticing, I'll be damned, the cranes and the backhoes pulled up in the black neighborhoods. We couldn't help but notice your path for it pulls up there, whether it's, off Crenshaw in Los Angeles, where they're building the new subway through there, whether it's a Bright Line in Florida. Go down to Miami and see where that thing starts down there. It's not near the beach. Let me give you a heads up. It ain't near the beach. Let me give you a heads up on that. And then you talk about Minneapolis. So when you start, now they want to build one between Dallas and Houston. So these high-speed rails, while there's nothing wrong with that necessarily, I want you all to keep, I'm taking this as an opportunity to mention this to you all, just to let you know that, by the way, I'm noticing the way these things are being built. And, at first it was one thing when they were building trains from in Colorado, from the airport to downtown or whatever. That was one thing. But now we're starting to see it's like, oh, wait a minute, some of these routes you all are taking, couldn't help but notice where you're steering them to. And it's like, I think we've seen this movie before, so I'm glad she brought that up, particularly with these high-speed rails are being built. You all keep your eyes and your ears open for that. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Let me get caller from area code 314. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
This is Dashini from Boston.
Dashini from Boston. What's on your mind?
Hi, Jason. Thank you for this broadcast. As an Asian person, I just want to say I'm a second generation immigrant. My parents are from Sri Lanka, and I see the genocide that's happening. I see the genocide against foundational Black Americans. And there is no Black and Brown coalition. A lot of Asians come to this country and they're anti-Black racists. And so I appreciate your broadcast because I feel like I'm witnessing a genocide. And I know everyone's upset that they think I have fake tears, but I agree with everything that you're saying, and I'm at a point where now I only vote for foundational Black Americans receiving reparations.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Can I ask a couple of questions here? And I want to thank you for giving us a call because it's always nice to know here. About how old are you?
I'm actually 49.
Okay. Well, how long have you been in America?
I was born in the United States.
Okay. Your parents are first generation who came over?
Yes.
Okay. And why did they come here in the first place?
They actually fled a genocide. They actually came from Sri Lanka and they fled a genocide.
Okay, they were fleeing the genocide there. Okay, well, that tells us about the time frame when they came over then. So a lot was happening around that time. Yeah. So when you're dealing with the civil rights movement in America and whatnot, when you're dealing with the 60s and 70s, you got to, like I say, Black folk, whenever you saw us in the streets and whatnot, we were the spear point that was opening up these things for everybody. There was no Sri Lankan, as you know, when you're dealing with Asia, you're dealing with Sri Lanka, you're dealing with Indonesia, Singapore, Burma, Vietnam. You're dealing with a bunch of areas that, there's been wars and conflicts and things, and they're heavily balkanized. You're dealing with heavily ethnic populations, and they kind of just hold on to that. And so you don't have a population like that to speak of on your behalf. There's never been that. So we were the ones who opened the doors for all these various groups in the Middle East, Asia, Southern Asia. We opened the doors for that. They didn't have to have a population to advocate for them. We were their advocates. Even though we were not Sri Lankan, even though we were not Indian, even though we were not Brahmin, even though we were not Korean, we were the advocates for everybody. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, that sacrifice has been misused. Folks got over here, and just as soon as they were no longer under the guns of a government, the Khmer Rouge or whatever, next thing you know, they in order to ingratiate themselves with the white power structure, they started taking on anti-Black racism. Now, that's for the ones that didn't have it already before they came. Because what you also notice is even over there, it can be an issue because it runs along color lines. Does that sound about accurate for what you've experienced, that it runs along, skin hue lines?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely the caste system in Sri Lanka and India, as you know. And so that is definitely a part of the culture. But it goes deeper. It's definitely, South Asia was also a colony. So you have, it's under white supremacist rule. And so you have that effect of white supremacy, and you bring that as an immigrant, you bring that to the United States. You have that concept of colonialist rule, and so white supremacy, that experience is, there's already a culture that's being formed before you come here. And so, but then it's just exacerbated because America is anti-Black racist. And so it just feeds that what's already there. If that makes any sense.
No, let me ask you here about your family, your immediate family.
Yeah.
Have you noticed any of those types of characteristics among them?
Yes, it's there. It's definitely there. And then what happens is once you come here, you assimilate. You assimilate, and then you want to be a part of white culture, white society, and then you just focus on yourself, and you're not, and then you're not thinking about the whole history of America and the history of how the country was founded on anti-Black racism and the genocide and slavery, and so you don't join that fight. You don't join that fight.
What are some of the things that you've seen in your family? Can you give us like a specific example?
I think what happened, specifically my parents never, which is kind of shocking, never said anything anti-Black racist. But over time, once they started the media, all of a sudden they start to just repeat things like, oh, well, if only Black Americans worked harder. And they just started, it's something that, it's like, wait, you actually believe that? It's not like they actually had an experience with that. It was just, oh, well, that's what the media keeps perpetuating, the stereotype. Well, that must be true. So then I would basically challenge them and say, wait, what are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. You don't have any actual experience to back that up.
Okay, when you say they don't have any actual experience to back it up, what exactly do you mean by that?
They don't know anybody that's Black because we kind of grew up in a suburb in Minneapolis, outside of Minneapolis.
There you go. There you go. Now that's what I was waiting for. We grew up in a suburb in Minneapolis, so that means that your family was actually middle class in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay, just like Kamala Harris,
I don't know much,
these were not poor folks necessarily coming over here, and there's nothing wrong with being middle class. That's perfectly fine. That's great, but like I say, it makes it a whole lot easier to acclimate to the dominant society's view of Black people when you're not coming up like that. So when you're just coming in and just gliding from one middle class to another middle class, and you're completely insulated. That's the crazy part about it is they've adopted these views and never actually came into contact with any Black people on their own. Never actually did that.
Right.
However, if someone were to hold their if I can use the phrase, Sri Lankan-ness against them, they would probably recognize that immediately and be like, well, you don't even know any Sri Lankans. You don't even know any. So there's the thing right there. That's why you see it's so heavily programmed. It really, really is. But here's another thing. For those of you who are wondering how the attitude come about here, I've seen it and heard it with my own ears from people in immigration, but particularly from the folks who have been responsible for this, like hiring illegals and whatever. They'll tell them, we want you to come to America because the folks there, the Black folk, are lazy. They don't want to work. So you're actually better than Americans are. You're actually better. So you're doing the country a favor. So if you all want to know where some of that arrogance comes from, it's because the people bringing them are telling them that before they come here. Oh, we need folk like you is what we need. And there's nothing wrong with having a good work ethic. There's nothing wrong with wanting better for your kids. Everybody does. There's nothing wrong with that. The issue that we've had, though, is that over the last century, we were in chattel slavery here, not in Sri Lanka. We were in chattel slavery here. We didn't have a place to flee to. At least you all, whether it's the Armenians, Sri Lankans, I can go down the list, Cambodians, they had a place to flee to. They could flee and come here. We didn't have a place to flee to. We couldn't get on a boat and go back to Africa or Mexico or anywhere else. We had to stay and stand and fight here. We had to get down and make it work here. We couldn't say, hey, everybody, it's rough in America. Let's flee to Sri Lanka. I'm like, okay, we would have passed y'all's boat on the way going. It's like, okay, where y'all heading? Sri Lanka. Where you going? Louisiana. Really? That's for over a century and a half. So you all had the ability to come to a place where you didn't have to worry about that being held against you because of the work that had been put in for over a century before they arrived. We didn't just build a better world for ourselves and our children. We built a better world for everybody else's. And the first thing that happened was they said, well, hell, let's join together with the folk that y'all stopped and make it more difficult here. And that's the problem. Because ultimately, if they ever get the opportunity to, it's like, by the way, the black folk were just the first ones out. Now we're going to go get everybody else. That's the way it always happens. That's the way it always goes. Everybody thinks they can dance with the devil, and then eventually the devil yanks out the pitchfork at some point and starts poking you in the rump. Eventually that happens. Eventually it does. And when that occurs, they'll be screaming bloody murder. Now you're old enough to remember 9/11. So you had all these Middle Easterners and whatnot, and they were lockstep with white supremacy at the corner stores and things and in Congress. And they were, and of course, in the Middle East, they were lockstep with it till 9/11 happened and the dominant society started going in on Middle Easterners. Then all of a sudden they start yelling for us. And then Donald Trump gets in office. He starts saying, oh, no Muslims in America. And then they come running to us. But in the meantime and in between time, it's a free fire zone on us. Right down to the legislative level. You don't have anywhere in America where black people are ganging up to make legislation against non-black people, even in the places where we should be. You're on the brink of extermination. You should be doing something. We're not lifting a hand to do, for the most part, we're not lifting a hand to do anything. We're certainly not preparing any legislation that targets anybody. We don't even have a vocabulary as a people that allows us to think of legislation that would target another group. If you sat us down and said, here, make a law to target another group, that would take us a few days. Because we don't really have a mindset that says target those people over there. Now we have one that says uplift them, but we don't have one that says target them. Take something from them. Because the first thing we'll say is, well, what did they do to us? We're not used to the idea of somebody targeting you and you didn't do anything to them. They're off in the suburbs of Minneapolis. They've probably been living very fine out there. That's great. That's wonderful. But it becomes a problem when you think that your prosperity has to come at somebody else's expense. Particularly if they're black, it's okay. It's just their place to suffer and do without. And then you wonder why it is you have the George Floyds of the world. Because let me tell you, if that had been a Sri Lankan getting strangled to death in the middle of the damn streets, and by the way, if you want to know what lynching looks like, that's what lynching looks like. Take a look at Eric Garner. When's the last time you saw a Sri Lankan get strangled to death by the police? Because I can name George Floyd, Eric Garner, strangled, and there's a couple of others. Radio Raheem was based on a real person in New York. If you ever saw Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, Radio Raheem was based on a real person. Actually, truth be told, it's based on a couple of folk. I can name a few people here that have been recorded, by the way. I can name a few who have been recorded. Getting lynched in the street, strangled to death. Strangled. You cannot name a single white person. Many times our population, you can't name a single one strangled to death in front of their family and friends and onlookers. You can't name a one. You can't name a single Asian of any denomination. And don't tell me about criminality. You got the Yakuza, the Chinese gangs. You can't run guns in America. You can't run guns or heroin in America without the Asians signing off on it. You can't do it. Not happening. And yet, nobody's strangling them to death. But I can show you black folk who've been lynched, strangled to death where you can see it. Strangled to death with a group of white folk around them, and I can show it to you. That's the issue. And so we have a fundamental disconnect where humanity is concerned in this regard. When it comes to us, it's a fundamental disconnect. And the real shame of it is we worked for over a century to make sure everybody had those abilities. You talk about Chinese people in America. Chinese people didn't have the ability to come to America before us. The Transcontinental Railroad, you have no Transcontinental Railroad if black people did not build the infrastructure necessary to create the economy that could support a Transcontinental Railroad or necessitate one. You don't have it. So before you build the Transcontinental Railroad, what about the previous 2 centuries? That thing didn't just spring up overnight. It was after 2 centuries of work to do that. 2 centuries of ingenuity to do that. And then abolition and fighting against slavery. But remember, the Constitution didn't just do it for black folk. So everybody benefited when we started pushing back against the system. All the slave uprisings and slave revolts and demonstrations and all of the people who were speaking out against white supremacy. There were no Asians to speak against white supremacy in the 1800s or the 1900s. There was none. That was us. And we never begrudged anybody that. You have never seen black people go down to Canal Street, Chinatown, anywhere in America tripping on anybody. You never seen it. Never seen it. It's like, hey, they got theirs down there. Hey, good for them. We don't believe that success for us has to come at somebody else's expense. That's the part that we're dealing with now, is this overwhelming practice that success has to come at our expense. That there's something just fundamentally wrong for folks that we help, by the way. And you know what? I'm going to say this right now in no uncertain terms. You know, if you know, by the way, were your family academicians? Were they academics that had degrees?
No, they weren't.
Okay.
No.
Well, in a lot of cases they do. You know, like Kamala Harris's dad and mom and folks. These were educated people. Barack Obama. These were educated people. So they're aware of the circumstances that made it possible for them to come here. Your parents were aware, hey, by the time they came over here, that was something that America had just opened up. That wasn't something that had just, it's always been like this. No, it wasn't. By the time they came over here, and I'm figuring they came over here around the 60s or 70s.
Yes.
Okay. By the time they came over here, that they were direct beneficiaries of the groundwork that we had laid for the previous century. They were direct beneficiaries, and I'm sure they were aware of American history to an extent, because you need to know if the folks you're going to don't like you. So I don't believe for a moment that your parents were just naive and ignorant about America. They wouldn't have left Sri Lanka on a gamble. They would at least be aware. By the way, do they kill Sri Lankans over there in America? I don't think they would come here without finding out that first. Is, by the way, they're killing us over here. Let me make sure they're not killing us where we want to go. Okay, they're not? Okay, great. That's pretty much the way the process goes. But they undoubtedly would have known about us. And I'm just saying your parents is a metaphor. These folks would undoubtedly know about us. So the crazy thing is they are aware of that. They know that. They come to America, and then instead of them saying, hey, let me give something up to the folks who made it possible for me to be here, it instead turns into an adversarial thing. And yes, they owe us something. They owe us something on account of the fact that we made it possible for them to be here. And not only made it possible previously, we still make it possible today. We make it possible today. it would still be the same situation today. Because let me tell you something. If black folk wanted to join with the right wingers and start targeting other folk, they wouldn't get nothing done. We could just as easy, if it was in our hearts to flip like that, we'd be targeting them like folks target us. We don't do that because we're the swing vote. We can make a whole lot happen in Minneapolis if we just wanted to. If we wanted to gang up on somebody, we're a swing vote. We can make a whole lot happen. We're not trying to do that. But we could. Ask Officer Muhammad Noor. Our silence during his case was what made it possible for him to go to prison for a decade. And he's probably going to wind up walking down most of that sentence. But it made it possible for him to go to prison for a decade because of our silence. Well, guess what? If we had hit the streets, would have been a different outcome. So everybody is still benefiting to this day. Kim Kardashian and the Armenians. The Armenians got the marijuana distribution game sewn up in California. They got that sewn up in California. I've already done a program about that, about the list of marijuana dispensaries in California. And the Armenians outnumber everybody in their applications. Folks can't figure out how the hell it's happening. Which lets you know it's engineered, of course. But you didn't have an Armenian game until we set one up to allow there to be one. Otherwise, they'd be on the outside looking in like everybody else. The Vietnamese who were down there in New Orleans, they couldn't set up shop there if black folk did not allow that. If we had done like white folk did us with Rosewood and Greenwood, Archer and Pine and Wilmington, it'd be a whole different situation if we had done that. And told them, you know what, y'all can go set up shop in the swamp somewhere. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. We don't target their stores. We don't target them from boycotting. We don't target their neighborhoods. We don't target their kids. We don't do any of that. That's the difference. Do you have any children?
No, I don't.
Okay. Well, definitely, I hope that, you spend your time talking to other people about that, because it's one thing to talk to us, and thank you very much for letting us know you're here. That's always good to know there as well. But definitely, these are conversations that need to happen among the Asian community. That really needs to happen. When we say Asian now, we got to include everybody. We used to just think about Orientals, but now we got to include everybody on that because everybody's playing a part in it. And this is a conversation that really needs to happen at that level. It really needs to happen at that level. Because this idea that we're taking something from anybody, I feel like Chris Rock, if black folk are taking it, where's it going? Because we're sure not getting it.
I completely agree. And when the Stop Asian Hate started that propaganda, which basically is making black people the face of that, I would challenge people with that and say, look, that the hate crimes are committed against black Americans. It's like off the chart. I would point out the facts, and it's just amazing how that propaganda has taken off. And I'm like, Asians aren't the victims. I don't know. I will challenge whenever I have an opportunity. I try to challenge the narrative that Asians are the victims. I know they're not.
Yeah, because they show some things on the news and stuff, but to try to equate that to a systemic oppression that is systemic when nobody is upholding it. You don't see any black folk out here saying, yay, clear the block. You don't see any black folk talking about, yeah, good for them. You don't see any courts upholding it. You don't see anything like that. You don't see anything like what happened with Peter Liang. You never saw any Asian get attacked by a black person and then black folks send hundreds of thousands of dollars for their legal defense. They do. If somebody does something to somebody, we're going to say, hey, let justice be served. We're not going to sit up here and say, hey, let's get together and serve some injustice. That's the difference. I want to thank you very much for giving us a call here tonight. Thank you very much for your insights, and please do give us a call again. Let me get a call from area code 347. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Yes, hello. This talking to me? 347?
Yes, sir.
Yep,
You're
this is
347, are you not?
oh, yep, sorry about that. Yeah, this is Sense Magnet from Brooklyn, New York. So, yeah, so I'm out here, this is literally the melting pot of statistical data for the entire consciousness for the entire world. As you know, the diversity here is insane. I've been here for about 30 years, and since I've been here, it's been every man for himself. And when I say that, I mean, like, you don't get an entryway into any business. There's literally businesses out here where you have to be Chinese to work there, or you have to be of a certain ethnic background to work there. From I know from the early 2000s, interracial dating really didn't even exist out here. And then when it did start to come up, right, we were always at the bottom of the podium. Like our sevens as men, we gotta settle for fives.
Well, that certainly makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Let me get caller Mary code 702. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from? Okay, sounds like they're doing dishes in the back of a Greek restaurant. Let me get caller from area code 415. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
This is Don P. calling from San Francisco.
Don from San Francisco. What's on your mind?
Well, I wanted to just kind of jump to 68 because what you said was really important. And you can look at San Francisco today. The first thing they did to us was they ran a freeway right through our communities. Then after the Civil Rights Bill was passed, Chinatown, it didn't really empty out, but they flooded San Francisco. Now, where we used to be 49% of the population, we're like 6%. And that's generous, so it's nothing new. This is what they do. History repeats itself. And the basic thing is this. They preached and taught that hate all around the world. So anybody that comes here, they hate us. And that's just simply it. And I'll say this one thing. If that your previous caller, if she really wants to get involved, she needs to start a channel. Now, she won't be liked much by her community, but tell the truth. It'd be good for your soul. I'll land my plane there, brother.
Very good point to make. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Don makes a very good point there. I want to thank everyone who has contributed to support tonight's program here on PayPal, Cash App, Super Chat. So big shout out to the Kit Kat Man, Black First as always. Thank you for the C-Note, brother. We appreciate that. Barry Jenkins, I saw you over there. Dr. Black, my girl Brenda Starr, and the new B1 Media is a lifesaver. Let me get caller from area code 646. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hi, Jason. This is Melissa calling from Brooklyn.
All right, Melissa from Brooklyn. What's on your mind?
I just want to bring up a couple of things. I know you mentioned them like last year when the Asian hate wave was going on strong last year. So a lot of the Black neighborhoods, a lot of the businesses tend to be Asian, mainly Chinese, Korean. And listening to the city council hearing, they making it sound like it's like the night of broken glass going on with Blacks against Asians, which is not true. And like you said, I believe it was last year, that if Asians felt so threatened by Blacks with Stop Asian Hate, like the Asians would have just closed down their businesses in Black neighborhoods, but they're operating just fine. They're coming every morning to open their stores with no worry in the world. So again, this narrative that Asians are being constantly attacked and harassed mainly by Black people is just so completely ridiculous.
Well, the real thing to take a look at here is that, especially for those of you who've been longtime New Yorkers, folks don't understand. New York City has the largest police department in America, and really their police department outnumbers a lot of militaries around the world. The New York Police Department is the most well-funded police department on the planet. The New York Police Department has its own foreign intelligence division. The New York Police Department has its own foreign intelligence and anti-terrorism division. I should know Officer Muhammad called me. I should know. No, that's his name. I'm not going to say his first name, but he knows who he is. I talked about this years ago when I was filming 7 a.m. Gentrified. They said they called me and told me, by the way, we saw a rental car driving around the area multiple times. Now it was Hudson Yards. I'm gonna tell y'all what it was. Let me go ahead and let you. It was Hudson Yards. I was driving around the Hudson Yards area because it was under construction. So I'm trying to figure out, where's the best angle. I'm trying to figure out where I can stop because, I'm an out of towner. It's like he's trying to figure out where he can stop on the street. Dude, this is New York. So I'm trying to figure out, where's a parking space right here? Bruh, it's 8 o'clock in the morning. You too late taking a parking space in New York. So needless to say, like an idiot, it's like 10 a.m. and I'm looking for a parking space in New York City near Hudson Yards construction zone at 10 a.m. So of course I'm making the block about 10, 12 times. Because it hasn't sunken in yet that, there will not be a parking space for you, sir. You better go get one of them overpriced ass $50 an hour parking spaces in one of the parking garages.
Right.
But I just drove around and around and around. And don't you know, when I got the car back to Enterprise, don't you know, New York City's anti-terrorism division was calling me, wanting to know who I was and what I was doing. They did not ask me if I had been driving around Hudson Yards. They told me, we've got you on video. By the way, there were cameras set up around the construction site of Hudson Yards. And I'm not talking about cameras outside the construction area. There were cameras mounted in the inside and the interior of the construction area. So this thing is under construction, but they got the cameras, security cameras set up before they even finished the exterior of the building. So it's just all dirt and concrete, but security cameras are set up. Well, they called me to tell me, we saw you driving around. What were you doing?
Right.
So I did tell him, I was doing some filming for a documentary and this, that, and the other. And he said he wanted to know what it's about. I said, well, you know what? Considering the fact that if this keeps up, you'll be in it. You might want to just stick around long enough. I'll let you know. You might get featured at this point. You might make it into the film. Mm-hmm. Now, he didn't make it into the film. I'm sure he's disappointed. But my point is that for those of you who don't know, that's New York City's police department. There are cameras everywhere. Especially when you get down to Times Square. New York is one of them cities got a bunch of cameras every damn where. Everywhere. Hell, it's practically mandatory on the buildings now.
True.
I said
that is
now,
true.
On top of everything else, New York City has one of the most enculturated police departments. What do I mean by that? I'm talking about police departments where, New York has precincts, and there's precincts all over the damn place. So what I'm saying is they're like miniature police stations. For those of you who don't know what precincts are, they're like miniature police stations. So they are very well in tune with the neighborhoods that they police. New York has always been that way. You can't move no weight in New York City without the police knowing. The police know every player on the street. They knew Alpo. They knew Frank Lucas. They were in business with him. They were in business with Frank Lucas. Nicky Barnes. So the only time when they get in front of us, they play stupid. Ooh, we don't know no drug dealers. I've never seen nothing like that right there. They hard to catch. Okay, meanwhile, Nicky Barnes is like, the cops, I got them on the payroll. They're right across the street, right over there. But when they come to us, then they start talking stupid. So folks who don't live in New York don't understand that. I've been there many a moon. A police car comes by once every 5 minutes. I don't give a damn where you are. A police car comes by every 5 minutes, except the Bronx. Except the Bronx. Now you know he's been there a bunch of times. Except the Bronx. Let me make an addendum. Everywhere except the Bronx. Manhattan, a police car, van. They got them little they got a smart car in New York City. I'm like, what does he do? You don't even have a back seat, bruh.
Right.
A New York City police car that's a smart car. I'm like, are you serious? I'm like, what does he do? He better not try to arrest anybody. He's just gonna have to mount you on the hood like a moose. But in New York City, in Manhattan, there's a police car that comes by every 5 minutes. In Brooklyn, it's roughly every 5 or 6 minutes. I don't care where you are. So what I'm saying is they are very finely in tune with their city for generations. Cops are generational cops up in New York City. It's the family tradition in New York City. So what I'm saying is they know their neighborhoods very well. And if you're from a neighborhood, that's where they're going to try to place you at in New York City. So this is a system that they have. It's very sophisticated. It's very well run. It is very well financed. You can't have a billionaire's row and the city is policed by the damn Keystone Cops. Let me say that again. You ain't gonna have a billionaire's row, but the police department is the Keystone Cops. That ain't gonna happen. That's not going to occur. Last but not least, the last two things. Now let's talk about the guns. Anybody in New York City knows you can't have a gun in New York City without the police knowing. You can't sit up here and bring in a damn car full of guns in the New York City. They looking for guns more than they're looking for dope in New York. Let me tell y'all something.
That is true.
I'm not going to say a damn word. Let me shut the hell up right now. If I go to New York City, I am perfectly fine. And I would never violate any of the rules or regulations of New York City. So let me just keep that to my damn self right now. If anybody asks why Jason Black ain't got no gun, ain't seen no guns, ain't nobody with no gun, never been sitting in the parking lot next to a car that had a gun, can't spell gun when I go to New York City. So don't ask me nothing about it. But New York is about that life. So if you got a firearm in New York City and you dealing them, they know.
Right. That's correct. Because, and like you said many times before, New York is tightly controlled by the NYPD. So, and, you know, it's almost damn near impossible to sneak any load of guns here. So that's why when I'm seeing the city council speech with the two Asian and white women saying, oh, they're under attack and la, 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 and they're jumping on the black guy who's the head of Vocal New York, which they advocate for homeless people. And now everyone is jumping on the Vocal New York guy, saying he's anti-Asian hate. Like, well, where is all this crime happening? Because, like you said, the NYPD is tightly controlled. They tightly control the city. So where is all this, like, Asian crime coming from? And it's only concentrated by Black people? That makes no sense. And then, too, it's like, you know, like you were pointed out, the Asian lady was saying about this Chinese landlord, and he rented out to a majority Chinese people. And you're right, that is discrimination in itself, because with the population makeup of New York City, why aren't more like, say, non-Asian, non-Chinese people in the Lower East Side getting into this apartment building? It's like a mafia that they're controlling all the apartment building and houses. And I know the
Lower East Side as a group. The Lower East Side is, as a geographic area, is not this big Chinese enclave. The Lower East Side is not this big Chinese enclave. How the hell you got enough people there to fill up a whole building?
And it's because a lot of these landlords, they, you know, these, I guess according to this lady, these Chinese landlords, like you said with the EB immigration thing, law, they funnel, and I want to go on and say they traffic people from their own countries to take up all these spaces in the apartment buildings. And that's why Black homelessness is so high, because you do have Black people trying to get buildings in nice spots. And you even mentioned this, like, I think a few broadcasts ago, about how the homeless shelters for, like, mainly Black people, Black men, compared to the refugee centers for the illegals coming across the border, they're like as different as night and day. So what's going on here? So it's like every 6 months, there's always some big Asian uproar. And it's mainly coming either from Chinese, Korean people. I noticed that you don't hear a peep from the Japanese or whatever. Like, oh, Black people this, Black people that, Black people are so anti-Asian, this and that, and this and that. And then too, another thing, and I don't know if your callers, you know, realize this, what's going on with these numbers, with all these Asian crimes. They're not reported by the FBI at all. This is coming from third-party organizations, not-for-profits.
Very true.
And they're saying...
Very true. Not even things...
Asian crime.
That's a very good point that you're making. I covered this before, by the way. We're not talking about, quote, crimes. We're talking about offenses. So what does that mean? If did somebody yell at you or call you a name, Did somebody bump into you, which is impossible to avoid in New York City, by the way. I've tried it. It don't work. I'm from a city where you do that and we slug people. I would literally have to be Bruce Lee, kung fu fighting from 125th Street North if I tried that. It ain't gonna happen. It's just not. I'm from a place where you do that and we throw down. In New York City, it's like, wow, you can stand still and people are bumping into you. It's like, what is this? So, but that can get reported through that AAPI or whatever organizations.
Yes.
This is an offense. So somebody's grandmama got spat on. That's an offense. So that's what she's talking about. Is those are the kind of statistics that they're compiling. Not necessarily quote unquote crimes, but then again, it can be. Remember the black woman who got arrested by the New York Police Department for yelling at the Asian guy in their store. Just yelling at him. They admit she didn't lay a finger on him.
Exactly.
She didn't even make a threat against him, just yelling at him. So what are you arresting her for? Harassment? Yelling at somebody in New York City? We're arresting folk for yelling at them? Are you serious? In New York? In New York. So let me get this straight. You will not arrest women for walking around straight up topless in Times Square around children. Now, the prosecutor can't be bothered with women with their pasties on in Times Square around children in front of McDonald's. That brings a new meaning to, would you like a fries with your shake or a shake with your fries? Brings a brand new meaning to it. And what I'm saying is that's what's happening. So that prosecutor can't do nothing about that, but you yelling at somebody, oh, we got time today.
Exactly. And then when you look on the FBI's website, it's still listed that black people have the most hate crimes committed against them. That's why I was like, where are these numbers coming from? Because the way that they're presented it on the media, like in New York and in LA, majority Asian enclave, they're like, oh, black people are committing all this hate crime against Asian people. But then when you look at, and then I was like, well, if it's not coming from the FBI, where is this coming from? And then, like you said, just looking at an Asian person wrong is considered a hate crime, even if they bumped into you. Or if they curse at you and you curse them back, they're going to call some not-for-profit, be like, oh, I was discriminated against. But yet still you have this woman, this Committee on Civil and Human Rights, giving a speech to the city council saying, like, yeah, we have, like, a Chinese landlord renting a whole 40-unit apartment building to mainly Chinese people. That's discrimination right there. That's like Nuri Martinez and the LA Council all over again. So, as a
mathematically speaking, it can't work. Mathematically speaking, that can happen.
And the city government is just allowing this to happen. Like same thing with the illegals coming from the border, living in these refugee camps. Allegedly in these refugee camps with like 5 4K TVs, telephones, Bluetooth, and all this. And then you have black men who are just trying to, like homeless black men that are trying to, get a foot up, trying to do better for themselves. And their homeless shelters are like garbage. They look like prisons. So I totally blame the city council and the city government. And this goes all the way up to our governor.
Well, it's not accidental. It's always orchestrated.
It's not.
Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. The other thing is I want to make the nexus here between the guns, drugs, and violence. I've already explained to you about the guns. In New York City, you can't move a trunk full of guns without the police being in on it or some organized crime being in on it. You can't move it like that. They know all the players in New York. They know all the gun runners in New York. They know all of them. Hell, if you live in Harlem, you know who all the hoes are. How is it if you live in Harlem, you just sitting there in your little old flat, you just sitting there in your little apartment, you know who all the hoes are on the block, but the police don't know who the gun runners are? Come on, man. Come on, man. Next up, we talk about the drugs. Major cause for that is that they are, and when it comes to homelessness, drugs play a major part in that. What are they doing in New York City? Want some weed? Want some free weed? No problem with that. No problem with that. And then next up, you have Mayor Bill de Blasio. Now, you all noticed that the gun issue popped up right after Joe Biden, right before Joe Biden walked into office. Right there in 2020, right when he was walking into office, that's when the gun problem pops off. But then you'll also notice Bill de Blasio was letting all the mentally unstable people out on the damn streets in New York. That's what you're seeing, shoving people off of subway platforms, knocking folk in the head all over the damn place in New York. That's not accidental. That's engineered. That was deliberately set into place. I sat here and documented it here. Hey, de Blasio is a bunch of mentally unstable folk, and de Blasio's just let the doors open. So he's creating a problem on his way out of office. He's going to make a problem on his way out of office. Here come the guns, here come the drugs, here come the mentally unstable, and then you bring in somebody else. Here comes Mr. Law and Order Eric Adams, and we just going to come gather them up, and then they're going to tell you, oh, but it's an anti-Asian hate thing. No, it's not. It's an engineered situation for the purposes of creating the optics that give you the cover to do what you were already planning to do. Let me get a call from area code 510. You're on Live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, good evening, Jason. This is Black Voltron Reloaded calling out of Eastside, Oakland, California.
Black Voltron out to Oaktown. What's on your mind?
Man, just this conversation. Uncle Don P, he took a lot of my thunder as far as this Asian situation. I just want to, just let the East Coast and the South folks know that this is just a California effect, just starting to affect the rest of the nation. We've known this out here for the last, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. This is nothing new. We talk about this anti-Black propaganda now, in addition to coming from white mainstream media, it's coming from Asian media, like Asian Dawn. We got a anti-Black racist who's married to a white man, Dion Lim, who constantly pushes this, anti-Asian hate done by Black people, when the FBI statistics already know that most of the the racist attacks affect Black people the most. Asians only 10% of what Black people are affected. This is all bullshit. This is all propaganda. This is all an engineered system designed to, like the one from Sri Lanka called up earlier said, to genocide us as foundational Black Americans. Same thing has been happening for the last 467 years and will continue unless we choose to fight it. The only unfortunate thing that I see is it seems like all these other races, Sri Lankans included, are using Dr. Claude Anderson's power-economic principles except for Black people, specifically foundational Black Americans, who he intended us to do. Group economics is the first thing. These people work on their economy, as you taught us before. Economy first, then you work on your media. These people have a media apparatus, economic apparatus, and now they're working on their enforcement arms to protect their communities. Why haven't we as Black people chosen to step up and build our economy? I mean, we're doing it here within these new Black media spaces now, but I mean, goddamn, it's 2023 now, Jason. These Asians, these Hispanics, these foreigners are everywhere. I just came back from the East Coast and the South. I haven't been to Tallahassee, Florida in about a year and a half. And for the first time, I've seen new construction happening. They're widening up freeways and streets and highways and stuff. But the main thing I noticed was there's an influx, a major, major, major influx of Mexicans, just like out here in the Bay. I mean, there's Mexicans everywhere in Tallahassee. I'm like, what the fuck? You people think that you're going to be saved in the South and there ain't that many, Asians and Hispanics that are coming there. They're already there and you don't even see them.
Well,
they're there in Georgia.
You have to be careful. You have to be careful about that in Florida because it may not be Mexicans. It might be Cubans. A lot of them are coming from Southern Florida now, so they may speak Spanish. Might be a lot of them be Cubans, and that alone, because that's the one we've forgotten about. JFK made it with their wet foot, dry foot. All they gotta do is walk out the water, and they're safe. So now, if they come up to places like Tallahassee, he's talking about Northern Florida, Tallahassee, Jacksonville. For folks who don't know, the Democrats depend on the major cities, okay? So when it comes to Florida, when they add up the elections, Tallahassee is one of the places they look at. Broward County, you're talking about Miami, Orlando, more or less, Jacksonville. So those are really your four major black enclaves, the four major places in Florida. Those are your major black enclaves there. Now, everybody knows about Miami, but it's once you get to Central Florida and Northern Florida, that's when you really have stronger black populations. So yeah, absolutely. If you're talking about Mexicans, that might go one way. But if you're talking about Cubans, those are guaranteed Ron DeSantis supporters. Heading forward, that's guaranteed. I'll let you have the last word.
The only unfortunate thing is I saw a Sereno tattoo, and I'm like, hey, that ain't no Cuban.
Oh no. Now, I'm not saying there's no Mexicans coming through there, because I-10, for example, I mean, if they come up through Texas and Louisiana, first thing they do is hit I-10. They hit I-10 going east. Bam. Okay. And they've learned, don't stop in Mississippi and Alabama. They throwing up love in Florida. So even though they might not be Cuban or, whatever, they still speak the language. So that's a big benefit. Right. That's a huge benefit. And we used to not see quite so much of that in Tallahassee, Pensacola, Jacksonville. You used to not see so much of that. Now you're seeing a lot more of it. Oh, yeah. And then when they hit Florida, that whole area there, Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas. I'm going to talk about this the other day. I'm cutting Black Bolton off here, but I'm going to let you finish. The senator or congressman from North Carolina? I want to say his name is Tiller. Or Tillin. This dude here, he's just sitting there saying, this is a North Carolina U.S. congressperson talking about how we need to make a pathway to citizenship for the illegals. Republican in North Carolina saying that we need to have a pathway to citizenship for illegals while the birth rate dropping. I mean, this is a white male Republican in North Carolina saying that. So basically, they've thrown up the signs to him, man. They say Tom Tillis. I mean, he's right there in the Senate, right there on TV saying it, making no bones. So let me get this straight. Black folk getting yanked out of cars and thrown out all over the damn place. But for the illegals, we said it's safe for you in the heart of the Deep South. That's not an accident. That's policy. That's ethnic policy.
So we're essentially behind the eight ball. They're just, laying out the red carpet for all these illegal aliens, these illegal immigrants, and legal ones. They're getting to the front of the line through the program you just talked about, and H-1B visa programs. And we as black folks, unfortunately, we're sitting here acting like, happy days are here again because we have a Democratic president. I mean, black people, how have you not figured out there's no such thing as Democrat, Republican, Crip, Blue, Red blood? All this shit is bullshit. It's white supremacy and the people who are fighting it. Either you're on team white supremacy or you're on team black empowerment. That's it. That's all the choice you have. All right?
Brother, if nobody's been out there on the West Coast, they don't see what you're talking about. California kind of leapfrog Oregon and Washington. Like I say, I'll tell y'all, I was not prepared for it. Seattle, I've never seen anything like that for the Asian population there. I was shocked. When I rolled through Seattle International Airport, I'm like, dude, they literally outnumber everybody else 9-1. I'm not kidding. 9 out of every 10 cars at Seattle in the International Airport were Asian. I know because I was at the airport. Now, I didn't fly in, I drive, but which is a long-ass drive from Louisiana, let me tell you. But I'm driving through the airport to pick up my people, and 9 out of the 10 cars were Orientals, Chinese, whichever group it may be. 9 out of the 10. It basically was like an Asian airport. That's basically what it was. Seattle, not Canal Street, not Manhattan, not San Francisco. Seattle. And then you leave. My folks in Seattle, y'all know all around the Space Needle And on down there's this performing art. When you get off the freeway, there's this you go off the freeway, it opens up to 6, 7, 8 lanes. You get off the freeway, which is dangerous, by the way, because the way it curves around. And then you're going by, there's this performing arts center. I've actually got it on video. It's been so damn long since I saw it. But there's this performing arts center. And you're heading up in this neighborhood, and there's these grocery stores and stuff. And I mean, all over the place up in there. So what I'm saying is they got their enclaves, man. They got their enclaves in numbers when because you're talking about the West Coast, you're saying how long y'all been dealing with that. Seattle has been slept on all this time. People have no idea. And so when COVID broke out, everybody and their mama was thinking that the first cases are guaranteed to show up in New York City. Nope. First cases showed up in Seattle. Kent, if I remember correctly. I should know. I was there. I was literally there when the first cases showed up in Seattle. Thought I was going to be smart, took Interstate 5 on down to Los Angeles. Figured, let me put some distance between me and Seattle. I'll be damned. Second set of cases show up in Los Angeles. And I'm sitting there at the Wilshire Grand with my Asian waiter.
Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. They're here. These Asians have made, humongous inroads here in the Bay Area. What you saw in Seattle is already happening here in the Bay. I mean, they've had these Asian massage parlors since the 1800s when they first came here. This is nothing new. That's why they tried to start the Asian Exclusion Act or the Chinese Exclusion Act out here, just to, reduce their numbers. They're afraid of the quote-unquote yellow peril. This is nothing new. Now they've opened the floodgates. Fremont is pretty much mostly South Indian and Afghani, and those ethnic groups down there. I remember one of the first broadcasts I heard you say that it's over for us in California, and I remember it pissed me the fuck off when you said that. But unfortunately, you were correct back then in 2000. I think it was 2017. And it's even worse now. If people in New York, if it's not already too late, you better gather up as much as your resources as humanly possible, and learn to follow the powernomic steps that Dr. Claude Anderson and all the master teachers gave us. We are out of time. We're behind the times now. We need to work at triple speed, triple time. 72 hours a day. That's how far we as Black people are behind. We have no time to bullshit anymore. Our children, our children's children, our children's children's, and the rest of our descendants are dependent on us to make things right that the baby boomers and the previous generations dropped the ball with. Either we're going to become a thriving, powerful, ethnic, racial group, or we're going to become extinct. The choice is yours, Black people. What y'all going to do? Black Voltron, I'm out.
Thank you very much for giving us a call here tonight. And by the way, one more thing about here. There's nothing wrong with being Asian, man. Do you? There's nothing wrong with that. Nobody's hating on that. What we're doing is we're laying out the facts here of the fact that we're up against individuals who, in order to be in good with the white supremacist structure, they're like, hey, we'll go ahead and sign on to anti-Black racism. We'll sign on to it. Hey, if that makes it easier for us, so yeah, it makes it more convenient for you, but makes it harder for us. Let me get called from area code 323. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from? Okay, call from area code 323 has been late on the draw. Let me get called from area code 973. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, what's going on, Jason? It's Najee from out of Central New Jersey, Edison. Everything that you said is definitely on point. I work in New York City. So when they was kind of like touting like this crime wave, I was always thinking to myself, where? I'm talking about, let me give you a picture. So I'm a truck driver. I'm still working, and I also have a truck business on the side where I have a driver driving from. But I'm still working for a trucking company. We deliver to restaurants. So I'm in New York City between the hours of 12 a.m. on up to 7 a.m. I'm talking about drunk white women by themselves are able to stumble up and down the street after they leave nightclubs, unattended, by themselves, just like what you said, you can't go 2 or 3 blocks without seeing police. New York City is heavily policed. New York City is really safe. So, and it was kind of interesting that Eric Adams and Al Sharpton was on MSNBC, and Al Sharpton made an interesting statement. He basically was saying, and paraphrasing, that the numbers don't support this crime wave. But they alluded to the fact that, but they have to basically tell people how unsafe they are. But the numbers don't support it. Also, but when Eric Adams was running, I delivered to food pantries. So my company was delivering to food pantries all across the city. Once Eric Adams came into office, they unfunded. So independent organizations now have to fund and pay for the food that comes to these food pantries.
Oh, and he's just started. He's already announced he wants to cut the New York City budget. They're frozen hiring and things. So yeah, he's just started. Now we got $300 million for illegals. Yes. I already covered this a couple of weeks ago, by the way, but we got a third of $1 billion for non-citizens, but we don't have anything for everybody else.
Nothing. So, but check it out. This was real interesting, Jason. So I made a delivery right before he was elected. So the same program that he cut, he used. I delivered about 2 pallets of two pallets of chicken. I delivered about 2 pallets of fruit to an Asian organization. And when I dropped the delivery, they were so excited and they asked me to take a picture, and they put a picture up of Eric Adams. So this basically delivery came by way of Eric Adams. And you spoke about the drugs and the guns. In the 90s under Giuliani, and you're on point with this, they had a gun task force. And if people were familiar with Washington Heights, now it was wholesale cocaine drug dealers selling grams and kilograms on the corners, but the police would pull you over and they wouldn't ask about the drugs. They just wanted to know where the guns were. So you are definitely on point. And to speak about the control of the police department, during the George Floyd riots, I was making a delivery in the Soho area. So if anybody know what the Soho area is, this is basically Broadway with Prince Street and Spring Street. We're talking about Gucci, Fendi, Prada, Montclair. Now, the police, I went through it. It was real interesting. They allowed those protesters to go down there and vandalize those high-end stores. Any other time, that would not be allowed. So this is just basically letting y'all know the power of the New York City Police Department and their manufacturing crime. Their manufacturing crime. Just like Jason said, the only time you're not going to see police or ticket agents is when you go to the Bronx. But when you're in Manhattan, there is no goddamn crime rate. Wait, you're talking about 71st Street and 72nd Street, which is considered one of the most expensive addresses on the planet. That's the money that we're dealing with when we're talking about Manhattan and we're talking about a crime wave. It's all bullshit. I close.
Thank you very much for giving us a call here tonight. We appreciate that. Certainly when you're talking about that kind of thing there, they know about that. They know who they got. They know where it is. No, you all would be surprised. Look, when you're dealing with cities like New York and Chicago, my people who live in Chicago, you all know since the days of Al Capone didn't leave New York and go to Chicago because it's the Wild Wild West. He left New York and went to Chicago because they got it locked down. They got it locked down. It's moving the way they want it to be moving. It's not moving on its own. Y'all know New York City has a damn city income tax. That city moves the way it's supposed to move. They got everybody locked down and locked in. You can't be no freelance drug dealer. It's too many, with all the mafiosos you got in New York, you can't be no freelance drug dealer. With Sammy the Bull and John Gotti telling you, hey, you can't move no weight in Manhattan without us signing off on it. How the hell is all of a sudden you got a bunch of freelancers? You don't. And if the Italian mafia knows the players and the Russian mafia knows the players and the Asian mafia knows the players, you damn well better believe the NYPD knows who the players are. How the hell is all of a sudden they don't know? In Chicago, you have a city that you call it corrupt. Let me tell you, that's a system. That's a system. Chicago is not out of control. Chicago is moving exactly the way they want it moving. You know why? I want you all to ask yourselves a question. Whether crime is up or whether crime is down, does New York ever cut the police department's budget? Ever? Whether crime is up or whether crime is down. We're not talking about freezing an increase in funding. Have you ever seen them say, hey, crime is down. We need to cut the budget for the police department? Chicago, let me tell y'all, when they tell you, ooh, crime is up, the police commissioner, what's the first thing he does? He grabs a microphone and says, hey, I need more money. Every police commissioner, every police chief tells you the same thing. You can't cut my budget. As a matter of fact, you ain't giving me enough. When crime is on a rampage, what do they say? We need more money. The streets are unsafe. We need more money. When crime is down, what do they tell you? You see, you finally gave us enough money. That's why crime is down. You finally gave us enough money. So you can't cut the budget now. It was increasing the budget that allowed us to get crime down. You got to keep the money coming in. As a matter of fact, you got to increase the money. Now that crime is down, we need more money so we can make sure crime stays down. Don't you all understand? Those are literally the conversations that take place in New York, Chicago, Dallas, Atlanta, Miami, wherever you are. That's what the police chiefs say. When crime is up, hey, we need more money. When crime is down, hey, we need more money. Let me get called from area code 831. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Yeah, my name is Mike, and I'm from Kansas City.
Mike in Kansas City, what's on
Can you
your
hear
mind?
me? Yes, sir. Okay. Well, everything that's said today obviously was great information. I don't disagree with anything that was talked about. One of the fellows that spoke a couple of calls ago mentioned that we do have a decision to make. Either we're going to be on a side of the fence that actually promotes our survival in this economy and in this world, in this country, or we're going to be part of the problem, which is going to be pushing for our annihilation. It's not about being Democratic or Republican. Joe Biden made sure that he went in right after his inauguration, didn't even stop by the bathroom, went to the Oval Office immediately after being inaugurated and signed in 11 million illegal immigrants and gave them legal status. I would submit to everyone that was to separate the Democratic Party's reliance on the black vote. It's not about Democratic or Republican. It's just like he talked about, Dr. Claude Anderson talked about the economy first. What can we do now? If you know the problem and you're still going out and supporting businesses and ethnicities that show immense amount of hatred and discrimination towards our people. We talked about the anti-Asian rhetoric that most black people are doing, that those type of hate crimes towards them. We know that's not the case. Same thing would happen with Kyrie Irving. These are all power moves by different groups to say that they are higher in the racial hierarchy that exists than we are, and we are on the bottom. It's a power move to say we're part of the system and we are above the Foundation Black Americans or ADOS, whatever you want to refer to us as. We're above them, so we're on the very bottom. How can we deal with this problem? It's about economics. It has to be collective, cannot be an individual effort. So we're going out and supporting the companies and the businesses that perpetuate these ideas or support them by not speaking up against them, then we're
well, the
hurting
most
ourselves.
important thing that you can do, though, is as an individual. They hate you because you are black, but they're able to victimize you because you're poor. So the best thing you can do, first and foremost, to everybody listening here, and I've told you since day one, the most important thing you can do is start with yourself. Stop with the spirituality. Stop with the money don't matter. Stop with that nonsense. You cannot win a war without resources. And you cannot transform a society on wishing. This is not the thing that you can sit up here and hope your way through. You've got to have tangible resources, so you making yourself the most valuable person you can then hook up with other individuals who are making themselves valuable. Now you no longer have a valuable individual. You now have a valuable, powerful group, and now you can get things moving. Get your income up, get your assets together, get your credit score together. Do not make any children you can't pay for. Make sure that you are being the best, most powerful individual that you can be. That's the most powerful step you can take. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Let me get caller from area code 763. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Yeah, Mr. Black, this is Barry. I'm calling out of Minneapolis, Minnesota.
All right, Barry, out of Minneapolis. What's on your mind?
I just want to say that I'm very, very thankful for your broadcast. I only wish that I had heard about it in my later years in college, my earlier years in college, because what I've decided to do outside in here in Minnesota is I've started my own accounting practice. I've even put to work some of my younger siblings that are around me, have them come through, and they told me that they wanted to work at clothing stores as opposed to getting real skills. And you are 100% right. We need a competent elite class who is on code. We can't have any other situations. And I find myself being part Liberian in so many conversations with tethers, saying that, oh, money isn't the answer and all this stuff like that. And I have nothing for them except for cut the check. I don't want to hear none of that. We had a minority construction company, Thor Construction, out here in Minneapolis. They ended up having a lawsuit with Sunrise Bank for financial issues. The company approved loans to them knowing that they had financial issues. And sometimes I just wonder, are they actually engineering this so that they can make sure that these black businesses do not scale, that they're not successful here in Minnesota and around the United States?
Well, like I say, they've got their own schemes involved with that. In some cases, they might get on a little government program that really just reimburses them. So they've got their goals for doing that. Look, these folk don't get rich by not knowing what to put money into. So if the money moves a certain way, that was deliberate. They know what they're doing. Although I'm very glad that you're on top of that there, because you're absolutely correct. We need a competent professional class. We need competent black lawyers. Right now, we don't really have that as a group, as a core. Your competent black attorneys tend to get scooped up by white firms or white corporations. So it's not just necessarily law firms. It is whatever is the legal division of these big corporations. Your best black talent ends up there. We don't really have the Johnny Cochrans out here like we used to. There's a few, but slip and fall attorneys. There's one in particular in Florida. He's real good about that, and I think they're making a movie about him. But as a core, as a group, we don't have that. If we did, we would have individuals out here pro bono, and we'd get a whole lot done. We'd be able to rectify everything from the police departments to Silicon Valley. We need a competent professional class. We need a competent class of attorneys, a competent class of CPAs, a competent class of engineers, a competent class of bankers. Those are the kind of things we need across the board, because these are the individuals who have experiences that go outside of the community and then bring that wealth of knowledge and experience back with them if they are competent. So very good point you're making there. Thank you very much for giving us a call here tonight. We could go ahead and stay on here for a while, but I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up here tonight, folks. Like I say, definitely you are on notice about this. You are on notice. They are together. They are on code, and they are looking for you. Keep your eyes and your ears open. Become the best, most powerful person you can be. Join together with other like-minded individuals. That is the only way to make that through this. The other thing also is I'd like to thank you all for supporting the black media. These other folks get a hell of a whole lot more support than we do here. That's very important. So big shout out to folk like Tank Moham. Big shout out to folk like him and everybody Felix, especially here this weekend, and everybody else, I appreciate your support. I see you out there, and I want to thank you for what you do. That's important as well. And if you are new here to the Black Channel, welcome to the haven of intelligent Black thought. We do this every weekend. Click that red subscribe button. Click that yellow notification bell. Join us each and every time. As a matter of fact, where's Bright Eyes? If anybody knows Bright Eyes, if you're on her, she claims she's a big supporter and whatnot. I haven't seen her name before, but she claims she's a big supporter. So if you're a friend of Bright Eyes, tell her Jason's looking for you. Don't be scared. Jason's looking for you. If you haven't been to our website, blackchannelfilms.com, you want to go there and check out our groundbreaking best-selling documentary work, 7 a.m., Gentrified, Race War, all available on DVD streaming. Go to blackchannelfilms.com. That is blackchannelfilms.com. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for supporting, and thank you for joining us here tonight. And this concludes tonight's broadcast of The Black Channel. I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authority. And until next time, my brothers and my sisters from around the world, remember, Black is the future, and the future is uncompromising.